You found the skeleton. How would you tell people that was you personally? How would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next part of the Giants of North America. This is the Giants of North America 2, Les Géants d'Amérique du Nord. You know, because we changed up the language every time for literally no reason except that it amuses me. Uh, welcome back, Vishanti. Yeah, Pardieu. Um, so we're still looking at what is the name of this book, Vishanti? You got to remind me.
The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America. The Missing Skeletons in the Great Smithsonian Cover-Up.
Yes, because of course, Big Museum is covering up that there were giants. Yeah, big archaeology. There's so much money in museums and archaeology. You wouldn't believe it. My goodness. Yeah. Spoiler alerts. No, there isn't. Your average archaeologist is paid a pittance for his archaeological work. Look, there's a reason that people like archaeologists and paleontologists and whatnot who have that as their day job often also do have a night job that's like bartender or something, right? Like I actually know a paleontologist who makes a pretty big chunk of his money doing a part-time bartending gig while his full-time gig is paleontology.
Oh my god, that's super baller. It's like bartender by day, archaeologist by night.
Paleontologist.
Well, you know, the reverse, but yeah.
But yeah, so there's not that much money in archaeology. But in case you guys weren't here for the first time, a lot of this book is newspaper articles that are not themselves sourced, because according to our author, that's more reliable somehow. Just random things printed in newspapers over the past, 250 years. Totally more reliable than actual sober scholarship from, archaeological journals. I don't know. But let's take a look at a few of these things. We left...
And before you get started, I'm going to say Bună dimineața. I'm pushing to get Romanian as one of the next subtitles that we change history to. Boker tov, Shabbat Shalom, Slava Ukraini, assez bon. Whatever anyone else's languages are that I can at least try to pronounce, I will say. But I will also mention before we get started that Richard J. Dewhurst used to be an editor for, I believe, the Miami Herald, and couldn't find, in his mind, reputable sources about giant skeletons being unearthed and then covered up subsequently. So what he did is he narrowed his searches to sensationalistic headlines. And that's when all of the results started popping up.
Yeah, it's weird. It's sort of like, hey, real sources don't have anything, so let's check like the Weekly World News. I'll bet they have something. It's like, yeah, I bet they do.
You literally said that as TC the Unbeliever said Weekly World News.
Oh yeah, he did. And also for €2, Inkboy says archaeologists. You mean dirt people? Just joking. But yeah, actually archaeologists. They are dirt people. Of course, if young Earth creationism is true, then everyone's a dirt person.
Oh.
Yeah, because despite the fact that they'll make fun of evolutionists for saying that life came from rocks, they're the ones who actually literally believe that humans are made of dirt. So, like...
Isn't dirt just, like, finely ground rock?
It's finely ground rock plus organic debris.
Plus organic debris. Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, just finely ground rock is sand.
Creationists believe finely ground rock and organic matter.
Yeah. Bunch of... which, here's a fun thing. You don't get dirt without death and decay. So everyone who's like, there was no death before the fall. Well, then there was no dirt before the fall. Because, yeah, without all that death and decay, what would be dirt is just sand.
Lord.
Yeah.
I will say also the bit of trivia is that 90% of people who say Judeo-Christian literally just mean Christian. And the traditional rabbinic interpretations of Genesis 1 and 2 are on record as, like, saying if you take this as literal 6 days, you're committing, like, an egregious just misunderstanding of the text. So that's not even a historical, like, Jewish reading. having it be
Shocker.
young Earth. Like,
To be fair, it's not a historical Christian reading either. It's actually
true.
I mean,
Like what, 200 years old or so? Ish.
less really.
Well,
Probably closer to like
wait, when
100.
did Usher publish his book?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, so okay, about 200. Yeah, that's fair. It wasn't mainstream in any part of Christianity though until the much later.
Yeah. Weird.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna add this to the stream. All right, so we're gonna take a little while to take a look at like all of the just ridiculous news articles, most of which are like 3 sentences long or something, maybe
Because
4.
most of them that he has, taken from, he only quotes the bit about like where it was found, by whom sometimes, and then how big they're purported to be, which that does not include measurements because why would it?
By the way, Silver Harlow points out that regolith and sand is a kind of regolith. And yes, that is technically correct. Dirt without the organic part would be various kinds of regolith. However, I feel
on
like
the
that's
moon.
right, but I feel like that's a term that most people are unfamiliar with. So,
Unless they're huge Mythbusters fans.
well, or just really into geology, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, let's see. And also, I want to look at like some of these dates are at periods of time when like no one could fact check anything, basically. Like skeleton 7 feet long, New York Times, May 5th, 1885. What are you going to do to fact check this in 1885 if you're anywhere other than where this is actually occurring?
In Licking County, Ohio.
Which is a wonderful name, by the way.
You may want to start out with that article from this. Is it the Salt Lake Tribune? It's got a picture.
Oh, which page is that on?
I sent it to you on Discord. It is an attachment.
Oh.
It's got a big giant illustration.
Okay, hold on. Let me pull up the Discord. Where did you? Oh, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
The National Aboriginal History of Tennessee up to the first something. All right. Well, let me change what I'm viewing.
It's not the link. It's not the link. Scroll down to where it says Salt Lake Tribune, and then there's an attachment I link to.
Oh my goodness, you're making this hard for me.
No.
What are we doing?
Check your DMs.
I'm so confused.
You guys were so prepared.
Yeah. Oh, Salt Lake
Dapper
Tribune.
didn't tell me until like less than an hour ago that he wanted to like get into a different section of the book after I'd already spent like an hour highlighting. And I was like, bro.
This is accurate. Okay, here we go. Sorry.
So there you go.
Look, it's been a weird, busy week for me. So, yeah.
It's been a week for me as well.
Yeah, actually, it's been a month.
Well, because we live in a society. So.
All right, this is tiny. Okay, so let's see. Let's read some of this. Here's the skull of one giant aborigine. All right. Dr. Preston Holder above, this guy, which this skull does not actually look obviously gigantic.
That does not look obviously giant.
So now I will say this, right? Humans are spectacularly bad at like judging volume of things. Like, you can actually do experiments with humans where like you line up different like cups of different shapes, but that all have the same volume, and they'll consistently order them in the perceived amount of volume, even though they're actually all the same. And like you can trick humans into thinking that things have a higher volume than another thing, even though it actually has a lower one. So I want to say first, just off the cuff observation of like this, what looks like it looks like a drawing, doesn't it?
Yeah. But
yeah, so just an impression of some like crappy quality black and white drawing. It's not going to tell you much. However, we'll see what's in here. So you think we should just start reading some of this?
Sure.
Perhaps the discovery of the first dinosaur bones on the North American continent created no more sensation in scientific circles than the recent revelations of prehistoric man lately developed off the coast of Georgia. Excavating the sand dunes and the sun-sprayed Golden Isles, archaeologists have gouged the strange record of an amazing prehistoric race of giants. Sorry, the
quality's not super great.
Yeah, as I'm sure everyone
digitized.
in here can see, like, this is extremely poor quality. With pickaxe and spade, these searchers into the past have burrowed their way beneath the surface of the palm-clad dunes of Georgia's semi-tropical coastal islands to delve into the mysteries of the previously unsuspected race of mankind. When is this published?
This is from 1936.
Oh, yeah, 1936. That checks out. You can always tell whenever someone says undiscovered race of man that it's probably before like the 70s. Because around then is when like scientific literature really stopped using the word race in regards to humans because it just didn't make biological sense. And yeah, like at that point, it was getting pretty obvious. Sorry.
Okay, let's see. What manner of men were these? The members of whose tribe all averaged between 6 1/2 and 7 feet tall. That's not
giant.
Taller than.
So that's that's actually not that
basketball player size. That's not like, oh my god.
Yeah, that's actually not that far off from the average height in like the Netherlands.
Yep.
It is taller, but it's not exceptionally taller. Like this is not giants. This is just tall people. Like we have groups in say like the Congo where the average height is under 5 feet. And we have groups in Europe where the average height is significantly over 6 feet. Right? Like humans vary considerably in height.
Preston Holder, archaeologist, is directing the excavation work, which has been sponsored by the Smithsonian Institute.
Oh no.
Big archaeology, here we go. Slowly, painstakingly, Holder is endeavoring to piece together the slender threads that will lead him into the past. He's expressed the opinion that the Smithsonian enterprise will throw important light upon a thus far unrecorded tribe and perhaps establish a new link in the history of mankind in North America. Let me skip over to something about but today, only one of all the islands still remains open to the public. It's called St. Simon's and Sea Island, and had it not been for the never-ceasing strides,
ceasing, yeah.
God. Ceasing. Strides of modern civilization, it might well be that the new proof of America's prehistoric giants might never have been found. For it was the groundbreaking for Georgia's new Glenn County Airport that revealed the first evidences of the find, which has since brought archaeologists fairly tumbling over one another.
Okay.
I just imagine like in World War Z where there's like so many zombies that they're all just like falling all over one another. That's archaeologists.
That's the movie though, not the book. That didn't happen in the book.
Yeah, definitely.
Which, by the way, the book is better. Go read the book.
Yeah, that's one of the cases where you can definitely say that the title is the only thing that they share.
Well, and the bare idea of zombies.
Yeah.
Like, they're both about zombies and they both have the same title. And that's basically where the similarities end. Also, in the book, Israel did way better than they did in the movie.
Yeah. Also that.
Because it's actually a major point in both the movie and the film, how Israel's doing. And yeah, in the book, they did a lot better.
So the next couple paragraphs discuss how they actually found these things. They were, building stuff and they blew up some ground to make way for their stuff they were building. And they're like, oh shit, bones.
And so let's take a quick look at some of these pictures of the bones.
Yeah, they had to call the archaeologist, so Alish Hrdlichka.
Oh, there's a familiar name.
Yeah, eugenicist. Woo!
Well, okay, in the 30s, there were a lot of those.
Yes, there were.
Like, archaeology, anthropology, and eugenics were just sort of like... There was a whole lot of overlap in the Venn diagram between those three.
Oh, yeah. In some cases, they were a perfect circle.
Yeah, so that is one of the things you gotta remember is anytime you're getting archaeological stuff from, like, the early 20th century, there's a very, very high chance that it's influenced by fairly nonsense eugenics ideas. So, yeah, that's a thing you really do have to keep in mind.
So unlike most of the news articles that are presented in this book, this one actually does have at least sketches or artistic renderings of their purported finds. And it even includes like a generalized map of where you could find, this stuff. So it's, a little bit south of Savannah. It's on the coast of Georgia. And you could see like that. I'm, again, not claiming to be very good at eyeballing scale, but those don't look like giants to me. Like they look like maybe just slightly larger than this guy.
Right. So the most we can really say for this hypothesis of giants is that there were in the past groups of humans in North America whose average height was on the high end for normal human average height, or for normal human heights. That's basically it. And I mean, here's like an actual skull size comparison. And yeah, sure, the one on the right is definitely bigger than the other two, although the one in the middle is missing the mandible, which makes it seem smaller than it actually is.
Mhm.
But like, not by some like unnatural degree, right? Like, you could find skulls that different in size within a single family unit, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm significantly taller than my sister. I'm pretty sure my skull would look significantly bigger than hers if you could look at both of them side by side.
And I know this is going to sound pretty far out there, but your skull size correlates to your age as well.
So
yeah.
Oh, and here
At
is the
least
site
this one
map.
gives you some pretty pictures to look at. So yeah, there you go. You can kind of see where it is in relation to Savannah and off the little marshy Georgia coast there.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I love these barrier island things, and like the geological processes that form those are super cool. But we're not going to get into it. But like, yeah, if you ever want to look into some interesting like geomorphology, look into how those little like barrier islands get formed. It's really cool. It has to do with like deposition and currents in the water and climate cycles and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, hey, Writer Dinosaurs is in the
Hey,
chat.
yeah, and he's right. Just like today, there are tall people. Yeah, there were tall people in the past. That it's a big stretch to go from tall people existed in the past to a race of giants with twice as many teeth as normal ruled North America as god kings. I mean, it's a really big stretch. And actually, so before last time there was discussion about double tooth rows, and someone.
Oh, you're gonna get that today too.
Well, sure, but I want to say that I actually looked into more of this because I did some further digging into like giants in North America conspiracy stuff. And no, what they mean 2 rows of teeth that are adult teeth, one behind the other, not like child, like, you know, your milk teeth and then your adult teeth up in the jaw. No, they mean an adult with 2 full sets of adult teeth, which no mammal does that. That's just not a real thing.
Yeah, literally almost like the way sharks have rows of teeth. That's how
Yeah.
they meant these humans had like double rows of teeth.
Yeah, and that's just not real. That's not how mammals work. Starrunner says, are there not cases where predators get larger as the prey get larger? Yeah, so there can be size-based arms races. There's a fair chance that something like that happened in like Cretaceous North America, where you see as the Cretaceous kind of marches on, Neoceratopsians as well as Tyrannosauroids both getting bigger, and we know that they had predator-prey interactions because, I mean, we can find stab wounds from ceratopsian horns in Tyrannosauroids, and we can find Tyrannosauroid bites on ceratopsian bones that have healed. So, like, we know they were fighting. We know they were predating upon each other. Well, you know, Tyrannosaurids on the ceratopsians. And yeah, there's a general increase in size. And you can probably see some stuff like with that too in like mammals. So for instance, if you go back, a lot of bovids were not as big as they are today. And that's bovids are animals like antelope, cows, bison, buffalo, that kind of thing. Also sheep and goats. But then as a lot of the other megafauna start going away, they start to dominate sort of the megafaunal or herbivore roles in a lot of Eurasia and Africa. And also, you know, felids, which were not as big, got bigger. So like Siberian tiger big in some cases.
Yeehaw.
But there are also you know, things that push animals to be smaller. So like island dwarfism is a pretty big one.
I'm laughing at enough already in the chat. Wait, guys, I have to translate it into freedom units. How many bald eagles tall is that?
You know, we should push for that to be a new standard of measure. That because
Bald eagles are fairly substantial
Oh,
in
they're-
terms of size. I mean,
yeah, they're pretty big birds. Okay.
I will say that only on my one very slight sports ball tangent. In Auburn, they have a raptor center, and during various sporting events, they'll bring out their golden eagle or one of their bald eagles, And those birds are giant. Like, you see them in books and you don't get a real proper sense of scale. And then
Yeah.
you see them in person and it's taking up like well over half the vertical length of an adult male body. And you're like, that's a big ass bird.
Yep. Also, those are the only 2 species of eagle that breed in North America. Golden eagle and bald eagle. Just
Big old birds.
fun facts.
Beards.
All right. So should we switch back to
I'm
the...
about the same size as Rider of Dinosaurs. I am like maybe half an inch taller.
Nice. Well, I'm about 2 meters tall, being a ceratosaurus, so you know.
True. Okay. So we both could ride you and not like overpower your...
Depending on where like
Literally.
you put the center of mass, yeah, you're gonna probably have to put it like right over where my knees normally go. Otherwise, I'll be off balance.
Yeah, you'll tip forward like
Yeah.
that owl just donk.
People here haven't seen that. You can't just reference things you sent me one day.
I mean, you could pull it up, but dude, just God, this poor owl.
Anyway, should we switch back to the book, or should we keep going with this
Sure,
article?
yeah, we can
Okay.
go back to the book.
So, by the way, I want to say, if you were going to look at a newspaper, that is the kind of thing I would want to have. Is that,
Yeah.
you know, like actual site maps and things like that. And also, I want to point out, the Smithsonian wasn't covering up this whole thing.
No.
In that article, which is, you know, because they don't do that, because they don't... Like, if there were real giants in North America, the Smithsonian, I can't imagine, would be like, no. They'd be like, oh, well, that's cool. Let's you know, do some research.
Yeah, and then again, the thing is about archaeology is that when you find something new that doesn't fit what you thought was going on, you're like, holy crap, we found something new that doesn't fit with our expectations. We need to figure out, you know, how do we adjust our models because this is obviously a thing.
Yeah.
They don't go, oh no, this doesn't fit our model. We got to hide it so no one finds out.
Yeah, that's not the business that science is in. It's the business that, like, pseudoscience is in. Look, Rider of Dinosaurs, you know, like, sometimes people need to get places, and having a big old Ceratosaurus to ride, you know. I would insist on a very nice, comfy saddle that's not going to give me saddle sores, though.
Well,
No
luckily
chafing.
for you, I'm like maybe a $1.05 soaking wet, so I wouldn't have the mass required to
That's
cause,
exactly
like,
how much freedom costs.
egregious saddle sores. But I would make sure that there's good blankets and like
Oh, good, thank you. All right, the discoveries of Aaron Wright in 1800. What year are we on? My goodness. Okay, so this is from 1878, reporting on something that was already 78 years old. And it's also, the reporting on the thing that's over 78 years old is itself well over a century old. Okay,
Right.
so,
breaking news.
my goodness. Even when this was reported, it was already hopelessly out of date, but okay.
Good.
Aaron Wright has gone down the history books as the discovery of the... I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Conyo? Conyo? Is it French?
Canute?
Conyoute?
Canute?
It's in
a
Ohio.
native word,
Oh, is it?
so-
Okay. I was thinking maybe it was some kind of weird French word.
Eh,
Conyote giants? Anyway. The unusually large-boned ancient inhabitants of Ashtabula County, Ohio. In an 1844 count, so still 44 decades afterwards. As someone with some history training, this is not a very good source. This is like a third-hand source at best, and from just a historical record, 1878. That's not a citation. What does that
Nope.
mean? Ashtabula County historical record, is that like an annal that's kept somewhere in Ashtabula County where they just write down all the stuff that happens in the county? Because I doubt it.
I included a link to the Canute, Ohio history and genealogy, like, transcription of this particular work.
Yeah.
So if you want to read it, it's got something cool in it, but this is not an archaeology journal. This is not peer reviewed. It's just like people who are into history. So this is not 100% objective and
Okay, so
subject to-
once again, we're digging in mounds because, yeah, of course we are. Also, I'm going to point out that in the 1800s, the difference between archaeology and grave robbing was basically nil.
almost non-existent.
Yeah, there was no like ethical standards or evidentiary standards or any implication about whether or not finds were going to be available for scientific examination versus just being sold into private collections. It was basically just a gray market in artifacts, and people routinely made stuff up to make their finds more valuable because they weren't generally digging the stuff up for scientific and sober academic reasons. They were digging it up to sell.
Oh, Venerable Bead says it's Coniout.
Coniout. Okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Also, yes, JS. Cindy Lincoln recently used some Ron Wyatt material to make a case for the Exodus. Yeah, I am very familiar with most of those clips and arguments, and I made one very, friendly and polite comment to her on one of her videos about Ron Wyatt. I've decided that if she wants to investigate that objectively, she will do it on her own time. But I will not be the one to convince her otherwise, no matter how polite I am.
Oh, the Venerable Bead has changed his name to the Sisyphean Bead, just like in the Discord. Nice.
Oh, okay.
I like it. All right, so so what is most remarkable concerning them is that among the quantity of human bones they contain, there are found specimens belonging to men of large stature, which means that there were also men of regular stature, which means that you've found. Okay, so you found a population of humans of variable size, which is basically all populations of humans. Got it. And who must have been nearly allied to a race of giants. Citation needed, my dude. That is not a thing you can just say. So, yeah. Of course OBS is being a jerk. OBS, do the thing.
Long, low O sound.
Oh. Come on. Yeah. So, I should start, testing this before we go live, my citation needed, because OBS likes to just refuse to use it correctly, and I don't know why.
Okay, I will also clarify, Sisyphean Bead. The all represents the long, low O sound like oat. So is it Connie oat? Like you eat oats?
I
think, but whatever.
Connie
I will say this, that you will find commonly in these stories of giants being discovered in North America. It's always the skulls were huge and you could fit the jawbone over a regular person's face. And that is almost all of these accounts. And again, it doesn't matter what your jaw looks like in comparison to another person. Was that outside the normal distribution of human skull sizes?
I guarantee you I could find a human jawbone of a currently living human that, if extracted, would fit around the outside of the jaw of a currently living other human. That's not on its own very significant. And also, GeoSam says, found your channel via Guts at Gibbon and the show critiquing Dismantled, Science for the Win, with horns.
Horns up.
So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I had a lot of fun. I'm sorry that my audio was so absolutely terrible. I promise that's not normally how I sound. And we're going to actually be doing, tomorrow, we're going to be recording another episode that will be premiering on my channel. So, yeah, if you guys were a fan of the Dismantled, is I believe what we called it. It's over on Guts at Gibbon's channel. Yeah, next episode should be coming out in a bit under a week on my channel. So, yeah. Anyway, exhibiting ocular proof of the degeneracy of the human race since the period in which these men occupied the soil we now inhabit. There were tall people. Oh, okay. Sisyphean Beat has given me the IPA. Okay. Thank you.
So 30-06.
Yeah.
Connie-ot. Thank you.
The IPA really helps, and Vishanti's reasonably informed on that too.
Yeah, I've forgotten a lot of my IPA training since I took dialect work several years ago, but it wouldn't be much work to bring it all back up to fluency. So
I gotta say, Nehemiah King is an awesome name.
Yeah, it is.
I'm a little jealous because my name is not nearly that awesome. That
sounds like a character from Pacific Rim, Nehemiah King.
It does. Maybe if they make a Pacific Rim 3. Hey, you know what? They're legendary. Maybe they'll have a crossover with the MonsterVerse, and we can have Godzilla versus Nehemiah King in a Jaeger.
Hey! I'd watch that.
I would too. I would be confused as to how the whole canonicity thing works, but whatever. Okay, so
it's canonicity. Not me.
I do a little bit. It's hard for me to believe in the stakes if I feel like the entire universe could just be turned on its head for literally no reason. So I care a little bit. Nettleton's account was widely circulated when it was summarized in Henry Howe's Historical Collections of Ohio 1847. Okay, so this is not the date that this source is from. It's from 1847, and it's about something that happened in 1798.
20, yeah.
Okay. Okay, sure. And the subsequent discovery of the extensive burying ground and the human bones found in the mounds. Human bones found in the mounds. That's too much rhyming. Anyway, Howe repeats the report
Found in the mounds.
repeats the report that among those uncovered bones were some belonging to men of gigantic stature. Numbers,
Notice
please.
there's no measurements.
Yeah, just really. Okay.
Yeah.
He also tells how in 1829 a tree was cut down next to the ancient Fort Hill in Conneaut, and the local landowner, the Honorable Nehemiah King.
Nehemiah King.
Oh, is he a judge? He's an Honorable Nehemiah King.
Hey, that's
might
even
be.
better.
Yeah, with a magnifying glass, counted 350. I think that's supposed to be annular, but annualer. That is not how I'm familiar with it being spelled. But then again, you know what? Maybe in 1847 they spelled annular that way. I don't know. Beyond some cut marks near the tree center, Howe concludes deducting 350 from 1829 leaves 1479, which must have been the year when the cuts were made. This was 13 years before the discovery of America by Columbus. It was perhaps done by the race of the mounds with an axe of copper. So, I'm sorry, hold on. We're making a big deal out of somewhat cut into a tree in the 1400s?
Oh, wow, that's remarkable. No one's ever done that. I don't
Also,
know how they could.
How would you tell the difference between a cut made 350 years ago from a copper axe versus a stone axe?
My God.
As the people had the art to hardening that metal so as to cut it like steel. How do you know that? This is still another citation needed.
Citation needed.
This is okay, sure. Oh, but we do get a nice map. I always love the maps, right? So I kind of wish I lived near some of these things again, because when I did, I never really bothered to go out and check out any of the mounds in the area.
Yeah, I regret not going up to like Moundville. Lived in Alabama. Like,
Yeah.
I really, I mean, it's right there in the name.
Right.
That and Muscle Shoals. That also, like, in terms of like prehistoric, sites. Those two, I just never took time out to go see them.
Oof, the Sisyphean bead makes a good point. Remember, this is America where we butcher stuff like Amarillo, Texas, which, yeah, it should definitely be Amarillo, but whatever.
I'm less bothered by Amarillo than I am Notre Dame.
Ooh.
That one is pretty cringe.
Yeah. Okay, so, 5 acres. It's actually pretty big. I don't remember how to turn acres into any sensible scientific unit, like, square meters. But an acre is not an insubstantial amount of land. And I do like this cross-section here, although I feel like it's been vertically exaggerated, and I don't know by how much. Because, like, that does not seem like the actual slope of this thing.
Yeah, I don't know. But, I mean, it says it was a sketch done by a surveyor, but I don't... Again, there's not really a reference scale there, so...
Yeah, that would be nice. Well, I guess by saying 5...
Well, from A to B is gonna be just over 5 acres, like, lengthwise, so maybe?
Yeah, so I guess you could take, like, the square root of, like, the acres. I don't know. I like that there's a map. I wish it were more useful.
Yeah.
Scale bars are important, guys. Always
Very.
include a scale bar. I can't talk. Let's see. Some of these skeletons... Oh.
The next couple of these are mostly just... This article says this. This article says this.
So, Stephen Point Daily Journal. This strikes me as a super unreliable, like, one-town rag.
No.
Oh, okay, here we go. Space Dragon says that 1 acre equals approximately 4,047 square meters, which substantial amount of area.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah. Or 0.4 hectares.
Okay.
Thank you for all of the maths, which I was not prepared to do or look up. So, okay, here's one of my favorite things about my chat, is that they're actually willing to go do math.
Yeah.
Like, come on, that's crazy. But yeah, no, some of them are just like, yeah, I'll just do the math. Type in some.
Collaborative fact checking in real time.
It's really nice because like they're not just nuggets. You guys are like collaborators in a good way, not in like a conspiracy way. All right, so let's see. It's very evident that in an early day in the history of this country, this section of Ohio was an important camping ground for the American Indian. And indeed, well, first, that doesn't sound surprising. Like, yeah, okay, there are places in Ohio that were important places for the natives. That makes sense.
Wow, you don't say.
Right. And indeed, discoveries were frequently made which lead people interested in the matter of prehistoric America to believe that a race of mankind superior in size and strength and intelligence. Of course, to the comment, yeah.
Wow, yeah. No.
Goodness. So basically,
Ooh-wee.
this ties back to like what we were talking about last time, where it's like a lot of this just comes down to people being super racist against Native Americans and just assuming that they were incapable of making dirt mounds, which is like, guys, come on. The fact that they're not currently doing a thing doesn't mean that they're biologically incapable of stacking dirt on top of other dirt.
Also, this is another thing that I'm going to address when I take on Nephilim people like Brian Forster and L.A. Marzulli, which, by the way, I'm coming for those two hard. Those guys are fruitcakes pushing pseudoscience, and they're grifters, and I don't like it. So I'm going to talk about this because they're all like, look at these ancient stone walls that are in Peru that are so perfectly shaped. And then the Inca came along and couldn't replicate it because they weren't as advanced. So look at their shitty stonework. I'm like, do you not realize that the people who live in a place aren't the people who have lived there for all time?
Right. Yeah, that is something that people seem to forget, especially in the Americas. Like, now, a big part of that, right, is that we don't have an extensive written history about the, translation of one group to one place and, kicking out another group and all this stuff. Whereas, in much of, like, say, Eurasia, we do have written records of, like, oh, hey, this group conquered this group and they expelled this group who then settled here. But, like, that thing also happened in North America, and you can see it in the archaeology. Like, one culture will be replaced by another one, and then they'll be pushed out, and there'll be, like, a break in the archaeological record where new kinds of pottery and artifacts and whatnot just appear, and it's because someone got kicked out. Also, silver. Wait, what was it?
There's. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say someone pointed out their favorite French word was oiseau. Space dragon.
Oiseau.
Oiseau.
Oh, yeah.
Which means bird, and it's also one of my favorite French words because for 2 syllables, oiseau, it manages to have 5 vowels for some reason. Because thanks, French. I definitely needed 2 basically pure vowels to be written with 5 letters total.
Amazing.
Yeah. EAU. What sound does that make?
I was gonna say, in terms of like indigenous populations to a region, just because a group of people live there and they've lived there for, say, a couple hundred years, that's fine. However, when they move into an area, there could be hundreds of years, maybe longer, between when the last people group lived there.
Yeah.
So, for instance, we know the Inca will tell us, through their histories that, yeah, we didn't build these walls. That's just they were there when we moved in. So we just kind of kept them and tried to build on top of them. And freaking Nephilim theorists and all these pseudo-archaeologists will be like, see, this is proof of lost age high technology. And the ancient aliens people will go, it's aliens. And people like Brian Forster and L.A. Marzulli will be like, no, it was totally Nephilim from the Bible. These are giants. They ruled as god kings.
Yeah. And also, just produce the bones, man.
Yeah.
Stop blaming a conspiracy theory that you
covered
can't.
them all up.
Okay, so here's the thing with a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory does not explain why you don't have evidence. It just now means that not only do you need to provide the evidence of your claim, you also now have to provide evidence of a conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say, oh, there were giants, and I say, show me the evidence, and you say, I can't, the Smithsonian is hiding it. Now, I still need you to show me the evidence, but also I would like you to show me the evidence of a conspiracy by the Smithsonian. It doubles your problem when you just make up a conspiracy to cover up why you don't have evidence for your claim.
This
Now-
is something I've said last stream, but lack of evidence is not evidence.
Yeah.
The absence of evidence is not evidence. Like, you can't be like, okay, well, I think this thing happened, but there's no evidence because someone stole it and hid it. That's not a verifiable claim, bro.
Also, so in this next one, we're getting a Dr. Preston Holder above photo. What?
Yeah,
What
we
photo?
did that article. We did that article already.
Oh, did we? Okay.
Yeah. Also, I think my brain just lost some cells. Star Runner says, Vishanti, you should take on my boss. He thinks that before the flood, humans grew like reptiles, and that's why we have giants.
Ah, man, that. Yeah. So there's this thing called a growth plate in your long bones, right? And they shrink as humans get older, and when they close up, you physically can't grow that bone anymore. So no. Humans are basically mammals as a general rule are incapable of having indeterminate growth that just continues throughout their life. It's not possible. Further, like we said last time, you cannot isometrically scale up a human to be 10 feet tall. They'll die. Humans,
Almost like hearts struggle to pump blood through something that massive.
right. Actually, if you want to take a look at a reasonable take on a giant human type organism, I would suggest the giant 1/1 from Game of Thrones. I think he's all over like season 5 or 6 or something like that. I don't know. He dies at one point because, spoiler alert, like everyone dies in that show.
Everyone dies.
But the thing is that he actually doesn't just look like a scaled up human, right? He's got these very like trunk-like legs that end in feet that are very short compared to like the length of the, and by short I mean like from front to back, right? Like he doesn't have this big projecting forward part of his foot because all of the bones there presumably are centered under that center of mass to help him hold up. And he's got, relatively small extremities, and he has these very slow, deliberate steps most of the time so that he doesn't fall over, because if he did, he'd probably just break all the bones, which is actually a thing that elephants have to worry about. There's a reason that elephants don't run, they fast walk, and they don't jump. It's because a fall of only a couple of feet can shatter elephant bones because they're so heavy. And you can only make bones so strong.
Yeah, I remember seeing that they have... Notice they don't have long feet. They basically have like round stump,
right?
Things that they run on. But it's like they're standing on their toes with a giant cushy pad underneath, and that's because they weigh a lot of pounds.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, somebody asked, have you seen Trey the Explainer's video on A Song of Ice and Fire, Hominid Evolution and Anthropology? I know I saw some video on that, and it might have been Trey the Explainer's, I think, but I can also think of a few other YouTubers whose video I might have seen on that. So I'm gonna go with probably. I've probably seen that, but yeah. So that's actually a reasonable take on giant human type things. The take that you get from this or from like Dungeons and Dragons is nonsense.
Yeah,
you can't be that tall and just look like a big human, even if you're muscular. It's not gonna work. You're gonna break things.
Robert Wadlow.
Right.
He
was basically a scaled up human. Yeah. He died because basically, well, he actually died of an infection as a result of the leg braces he had to wear in order to walk. So, yeah, until you can get relatively modern leg braces, you can't get someone that tall who is able to walk. And then also, on top of that, even people who are significantly shorter than Robert Wadlow, but who is still very tall, like Andre the Giant, have heart problems because their hearts are so big, they just cannot keep up. So, there you go.
Yeah, and Ugly German Truce has a good point, isn't it? Also about their feet. They already have this hard tissue cushion, but it can only do so much. Running or jumping would go beyond what they can protect them from.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, it's not like the shock absorbers on your car. Like these are, organic
right
structures.
So yeah, there's a whole lot of reasons why you cannot just scale a human up to be 10 feet tall and expect that to just be okay. Like, very tall basketball players are basically at like near the limit for human height without it causing severe health problems.
Yeah, and even then they train and they take lots of vitamins and they have specific diets to maintain their athletic capabilities. It's not like they just came out of the womb and they're like, oh, I'm going to be naturally superior in size and speed and strength and endurance without any work.
Oh, yeah, Space Dragon says, to be fair, in D&D, there's magic, which can augment a certain aspect of their side. Yeah, oh, look, sure. I'm not saying that D&D is itself stupid. I'm saying you cannot transport things like that from D&D into the real world and just expect that would be okay. Yeah, so I'm sure that there's some kind of magic going on that lets a storm giant get to, like, whatever it is, 15 feet tall or something. And no, don't quote me. I don't remember how tall each giant is in D&D.
Sisyphean bead. Why do you think my fat ass has knee problems?
I have knee problems because I tore a ligament.
Well, I mean, and that's another problem. It's not just your heart. It's not just your legs. It's like your joints are not made to carry that kind of weight long term. They're very small and tender and like thin. So, I mean, there's more than one reason Robert Wadlow needed leg braces.
Yep. All right. So, Dr. Hrdlichka?
Hrdlichka.
Okay.
Hrdlichka. Actually, hang on. Let me make sure that it's lich and not leash. I want to make sure I got.
While you're looking at that, I will do some other stuff. It was in a mound that archaeologists.
Yeah.
Lishka or Hrdlichka. Okay.
Alish Hrdlichka.
Why bother with having vowels at the core of a syllable when you can just do rd? That's a vowel. That's a syllable. Anyway, it was in the mound that archaeologists.
Makes me feel like Eartha Kitt.
The archaeologists made the important discovery of a complete skeleton of a young man believed to have been in his teens at the time of his death. From tip to tip, it was measured exactly 6½ feet. That's not extraordinary.
That is not giant, friend.
I mean, look, it's tall. But the thesis of this is that there was an entire race of superhumanly tall, super intelligent giants ruling North America because apparently the Native Americans that are persisting to this day were just too stupid to do it, which is, you know, the very racist part of this whole thing. But finding a 6½ foot tall teen that's okay, sure.
All right, I mean, whatever.
An apron woven of shells. Now that looks interesting.
Yeah.
The Sisyphean bead points out Proto-Indo-European semivowels. Look, Proto-Indo-European was a mess, and I'm glad that I'm not trying to learn it. Also, there's the problem that we don't actually know what actual value all of the sounds had. So you get things like, this is the H1 sound. Yeah, we don't know what it actually sounded like. But it's not the same as H2, and we know that for sure. Thanks. Of the first 4 interments made in this mound, all were of a full flex type or curled up with the knees close to the chins. So like fetal position, I guess. 2 of these were children very close together in spoon fashion. Okay, and they were heavily covered with hematite paint, a red pigment used by these Indians. One of the skeletons still wore an apron of approximately 225 olivella shell beads. Other burials were yielded by the mound, were all prone or fully extended. Skulls were missing from these. Okay, I don't know what does this have to do with giants again? Why is this in here? So
you gotta pad that page count, man.
I guess. Oh my goodness. Oh, Ugly German Truths brings up Jordan from Spirit Science.
Ugh. You mean the guy that literally admitted to sexual assault? Yeah, that person?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, the one who was like, well, you know, you didn't consent, but it was coming from a place of love. Thanks.
Yeah. Freaking psychopath.
In an effort not to become angry, I'm just going to skip over that for now. I might do more Spirit Science content sometime, but, like, it takes a toll. At least this is mostly just goofy and not directly victimizing anyone.
Yeah.
Spirit Science, on the other hand, yeah. It's hard for me to find someone who I think is worse than Kent Hovind. But as far as I know, Kent Hovind hasn't done that, so... yeah. The sacred pools, secret caves, and the halls of the Mountain Kings. Oh, man, that makes me want to play in the Hall of the Mountain King.
Yes. I will say this, though, as someone who has a degree in percussion, that particular song is notorious and legendary among percussionists because it has like what is widely considered to be the hardest cymbal pattern in almost all of recent symphonic composition history.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, because it's like, but with two
I could kind of hear
giant
that.
plates of metal in your hand.
Also, that is going to be used in an upcoming video of mine, because when I was making the video, In the Hall of the Mountain King was stuck in my head, so I subjected my entire audience to it. You're welcome.
I think I attempted to play that cymbal part once, and even though I was in like peak physical form at the time, my shrimpy little arms just could not accomplish it. Like,
Sorry.
it wasn't happening.
All right. So in all my extensive research into the hidden history of giants in America, the most detailed, wide-ranging, and colorful account I came across was the natural and aboriginal history of Tennessee, up to the first settlements therein by white people in the year 1768 by John Haywood. Sorry.
I will link to this work in the chat.
Thank you.
And if anyone wants to go through it, they are welcome to do so. There's nothing in there that's like super like necessary to quote.
Okay.
Just a little bit of speculation on the author's part, where it says like, oh, we found some, skeletons which must have been 7 feet tall or more, and it's like, I know. Also, speculative evolution guy says, conspiracy theorists, the birds are the spies of the Soviet Union. I don't have proofs because they hide it. Birds
Yeah,
aren't
of course.
real.
They're not real.
Everyone knows that.
All right, so let's see. Took a thigh bone. Like, who, when, where's this thigh bone? See, the thing is...
Oh, it's in Tennessee.
But is it actually, though? Could I go find it?
Well, if
it's just
you
reported
know
to
how
have
to
been
get
there.
if you know how to get to Caney Fork off the Calf Killer River.
See, this is one of the problems with a lot of this. Is like, anyone can say literally anything, and that isn't evidence of the thing, right? But also, a body that belongs to someone 7 feet high or upwards, the majority of these have been people of non-inexplicable height, right? So, spoiler alerts, but North America, having been inhabited by humans for a very long time, also has a very high number of human remains. And they spread across a very high amount of the typical diversity in a human population. And a lot of the diversity in a human population that you can see in terms of skeleton is just raw size. So if you selectively check for bodies that are tall, you will find a lot of stories about unusually tall, but not inexplicably tall human remains, because there's a lot of those. So for instance, even if someone is so tall that they're taller than, say, 99.5% of the population, right? So only 1 in 500 people isn't shorter than they are. Well, okay, but if you had, say, 4 million bodies, you divide 4 million by 500, and you find out that, yeah, there's a whole lot of those really tall skeletons that you could find. Right? Like, it's basic, like, just statistics. Like, there's nothing particularly special about this.
Rainy Thursday says, hey, Dapper Dinosaur, I have not played a tuba in almost 2 decades, and I still have that piece memorized in my fingers.
Nice. Maybe it's time to pick back up the tuba.
Did you play the 4-valve tubas or the 3? I have a special affinity for low brass.
I said 500 because I'm an idiot. I said 200 because I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. I said 500 because I'm an idiot. It's 200 because of, math.
I will say that I auditioned for college on mallet percussion, but I consider myself to be timpani. That's my primary instrument, even though my professor would disagree. That's what I would consider myself to be as a timpanist, first and foremost. So I have a special affinity for low brass, because frequently our parts are very similar and complementary, and I always use them to tune our orchestra classes. So you guys are the bomb. Trombone players are a little weird.
A little.
But that's okay.
So I'm doing some quick math. If you had 5 million bodies, 25,000 of them would be in the 99.5 percentile type area. So yeah, you should be able to find a whole lot of really tall bodies. And if you only look for really tall bodies in your news stories, you're going to find some.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the body must have been about 7 feet higher upwards.
Valoon...
Where are we looking?
Valunder Gingerson. Okay, I think I got that. Valunder Gingerson says the conspirators talk a lot about the missing bones of giants, but what about the giant human coprolites, footprints, cave art?
Yeah. Well, actually, there is some cave art that seems to be depicting giant humans, but part of that is just like humans like to exaggerate things, and one of the easiest way to exaggerate anything is to just say it's big.
Yeah.
So human stories about unusually big things are not good evidence that unusually big things of that kind existed, because humans will make giants out of anything. Like, oh, it was
huge.
It's a giant snake that gnaws at the roots of the world. Okay, great.
All right.
Oh, there's a giant wolf, or there's a giant lion, or a giant sea serpent. It's like, sure, great, it's big. Everyone does that. There's nothing special about saying it was big that should make you think that big things like that existed. Like,
You just should start exchanging out, like, all of these giant names for the big nicknames for Dave Ryder from Mystery Science Theater, like Thick McRunfast.
Also, you can see this stuff even in, like, biblical narratives, right? So you get into, like, the book of Joshua, and we have reports about the Canaanites being giants, and they even, you know, like, they could just crush you with their foot. Like, okay, we have the remains of Canaanites.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't gigantic. I mean, sure, there were tall people there, but, like, yeah, that's just not how it was. So, I mean, all over the place, you get, oh, these people were gigantic, and then you look, and it's like, no, not really. At the plantation,
I'm just gonna start calling giants big, McLarge huge. That's just gonna be what it is. Yeah.
So at the plantation of Colonel William Shepard in the county of Giles or Gillis or Gills, 31.
31. Okay.
Goodness, there's so many county names in the United States that I don't know how to pronounce.
Tennessee, Kentucky. It's probably Giles.
Giles.
Because
all right.
there is a town in Kentucky called Versailles, and yes, it is spelled Versailles. Do not question it.
I hate that so much.
I know.
Okay, so they found a cave with several rooms. I would usually call them chambers, but okay. The first is 45 feet wide, 27 feet long, 4 feet deep. So is that like 4 feet tall? Like that's how much vertical space is in there? Sounds like a great habitat for giants. The upper part is formed of solid and even rock. Into this cave was a passage which had been so artfully covered that it escaped detection until lately. Okay, so they are rooms. This isn't just a cave. This is apparently a carved thing that humans made. Got it. A flat stone 3 feet wide and 4 feet long rested upon the ground and inclining against the cave, closing part of the mouth. On the side of the mouth that is left open, another stool rolled, which is filling. This also closed the whole mouth. Okay.
I wonder why they wrote an article about a cave where a stone rolled away revealed special human finds.
Yeah, that doesn't sound at all suspicious. When these rocks were removed and the cave opened, on the inside of the cave were found several bones: the jawbone of a child, the arm bone of a man, the skulls and thigh bones of men. Can you reliably determine the sex of a skeleton based on a thigh bone? I don't think so. I mean, you can from a pelvis, and you usually can from a skull, but like,
I don't think
femurs work that way. Look, any of you who are really up on like your like physical anthropology, let me know if you can actually reliably sex a human skeleton on the basis of just a femur.
I thought it was just like the pelvic cradle, not the like socket part of the. I don't know. That seems legit, but what do I know? I'm embarrassed, like the head's off a fish.
They formed. Being closely joined together and different forms and sizes, they formed the floor of the cave. Upon the floor, the bones were laid. The hat of Mr. Egbert Shepard, several inches wide and 8 inches long, just covered and slipped over one of the. Oh, sorry. What did I say? Oh,
several.
Okay, 7 inches, yeah, and 8 inches long, just covered and slipped over one of the skulls. Okay, so here's a thing. The human area where you put your hat is basically just covered by skin. So what this tells me is that this skull was like maybe like 2 centimeters bigger in diameter than this guy's head was.
Oh no, it's a giant.
Right, because otherwise his skull or his, like, unless he's wearing a cartoonishly too large hat that's just constantly slipping down over his eyes or something. My guess is that his hat is fairly well fitting, and that just means that, like, yeah, okay, so you found a slightly bigger
like
skull than your own.
there's a saying that I feel is very appropriate to this book as a whole. It is all hat, no cattle.
Yeah. Also,
For those of you that know what that means, I think you will agree.
Ugly German Truth says, isn't the femur angle slightly different due to women having a larger pelvis, but the feet being about as far apart as with males? So I do think there's a difference in the angle at which the femur is held, but I don't know if that actually is detectable in the femur without articulation. It might be, though, because, like, it might be that the femoral head has a different angle characteristic, or, well, it's going to be a different range of angles, right? Humans are bimodal in terms of sexual dimorphism, so there's always some overlap and there's always a range. But that might be the case. I just don't know if it's the case. Where's Gutsick Gibbon when you need her?
Right.
She literally did her master's dissertation on sexual dimorphism in primates.
What's the signal to summon Gutsick Gibbon?
I think you have to mispronounce orangutan as orangutan, look in the mirror 3 times, and then she just appears.
Oh my god, that makes me want to scream.
Well, it's one of her pet peeves too. All right, so okay, so a slightly big skull. The skull was large enough to go over the head. Oh, okay, here we go. The skull was large enough to go over the head of a man of common size. That would be a significant find.
Oh, okay.
So that's much more significant than, like, hey, my hat fit on this skull, which is just like, okay. So yeah, okay, that would be interesting if we had a skull to look at. Also, it's odd that the thigh bones apply. Oh, okay, reach from the tip of the joint, so at the hip, to the calf of his leg. That would also be pretty significant. I would like to see those bones. We can't.
Bones.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do, guys. It's been about an hour. We're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna switch over to section 2 of this book, which has to do.
Wait. There's one small little section we need to do before.
Okay, that's fine.
Tiny little bit. Okay, so page 33.
Okay.
Where it's highlighted in orange. The history of Jennings County, Indiana. And it says, years ago when Mr. Robinson's father began digging a cellar out of the hillside, he found there was a skeleton of a little child. The hair was white, and there were many indications that the child was not an Indian, but belonged to a fair-complexioned race of people.
Okay, so a few things. The hair color that you find in ancient human remains does not correlate well to the hair color of the person in life. I'm just going to point that out there. Nor does the skin color that you might find. But also, who the heck is Mr. Robinson's father to be able to figure out, like, ancestry and skin color from a skull?
He's literally just digging a cellar.
Yeah.
And finds this thing and goes, well, I'm suddenly an expert.
Yeah. Yeah, Okay, so this once again goes back to the extremely racist roots of this entire conspiracy, which is to say, well, we know the Native Americans couldn't have been responsible for all these mounds, so, but white people probably could have done it, and even better, giant white people probably could have done it.
Who ruled as god kings.
Obviously. Oh, and of course we have another one with the teeth are double, both front and back.
Yeah, double dentitions.
Yeah,
All right,
basically.
Charles Milton found a skeleton, blah, 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 blah. One peculiarity about the jaw is the fact that the teeth are double front and back.
Yeah, that's not how mammals work. So I guess before we go on break, I'm going to go through a little bit of how mammals work, right? So there's different kinds of dentition that different kinds of animals have. There's one of them is heterodont versus homodont. So homodont is things, well, most animals with teeth out, actually, which basically means all the teeth are about the same shape. They can vary in size, but they're basically going to be the same shape. Mammals are characteristically heterodont, which means they have different shaped teeth. So they have incisors, canines, premolars, and molars, each of which comes in its own unique shape in most mammals. Now, there are exceptions like dolphins who are actually homodont because you don't need all those different tooth types for just like catching a squid and then swallowing it. So there you go. But as a characteristic of virtually every mammal, you get this heterodont dentition. And then there is different kinds of That's polyphodont and diphodont, which is polyphodont is basically you just always get replacement teeth. Lizards, dinosaurs, things like this, they're polyphodont. So when their teeth fall out, there's always a new one in the back. Mammals are characteristically diphodont. They only get 2 sets of teeth. They get their baby teeth or milk teeth and their adult teeth. And also, there's only certain places in a tetrapod jaw where teeth can grow. It is impossible to get teeth in other places. It's the dentary bone, the maxilla, and the premaxilla. And in some cases, some of the bones forming the roof of the mouth can also form a secondary row of teeth. But that only occurs in certain, like, very, very basal, like, parareptiles and sort of amphibian grade, like, we're talking like Devonian animals. And then it carries through a little bit in Lepidosauria into some lizards, right? And that's as far as tetrapods go. You cannot get a double... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, the only times that you find multitudinous teeth is a specific condition like hyperdontia.
Yeah.
And you know when a person has hyperdontia because they don't come out in beautiful little neat rows of teeth. They're like growing out in whack-ass places, and they are not like perfectly ordered rows.
Right. And so, because there's only certain places where mammals can grow teeth, and it does not involve a double tooth row, not only would this disprove most of our ideas about history, it would disprove most of evolution too. So, I mean, hey, creationists, go find that double tooth rowed skull, man. Go for it.
All giants had hyperdontia.
Well, a weird form of very neat hyperdontia.
Yes, a very weird, specifically developed form of hyperdontia where it's double rows of teeth. Perfectly ordered. Not just like growing out of their gum line straight into your lip. Definitely not that.
So let's take a quick break. And then we will be back. I'm going to grab myself some water because I've been talking too much. And yes, the clock is fixed, everybody. Thank you. All right, we'll be right back.
in flight.
apparently we needed a citation because I basically forgot to turn that animation off. So sorry about that, but yeah, we do need citations. Citations are very important. Welcome back, everybody. I'm sorry, it took a little bit longer than I wanted to, partly because there was a dog who needed some attention because she was very lonely. So, and as for Space Dragon, talking about the Thorn Grazers on Serena, so I'm actually super behind on Serena. When I last looked at it, it was like a couple of years ago, and it hadn't been updated in a very long time, and so I just thought it was dead. I am aware that there have been updates, and I should revisit it because it's a really fun speculative evolution project, and I should probably make another video about it, especially since my first video about it is by far my most popular video. By far. It's like, I think it's at 63,000 views, and then my next most popular is at 15,000 views. So,
Wow.
yeah. It is. At one point, the algorithm just shoved a whole lot of views at it, and thanks. But yeah, I probably should make a sequel follow-up kind of thing. Let's see. Leisure Truth asks how I fix the clock, spay or neuter. That's a good question. I'm not sure, actually. But gonads were definitely removed. So before we get right into the pyramids and whatnot, we do have one thing we want to take a look at. So we have these supposed giant skulls, believed to possibly be the largest found in the world. Human skull shown on the right was recently unearthed in Victoria County by Texas University anthropologists. The other two are of normal size.
Okay, well, I will say this before we go to the next section, is that this is a very well done visual trick. Let's say that these three skulls are sitting on a table and not a ledge. Notice how the one on the right is actually positioned closer to the camera lens than the one on the left. So automatically, that is going to make the skull look bigger than the other two.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's forced perspective, basically.
It's forced perspective. So I would like to see both of those skulls on the same, like, horizontal plane of the table. Because you can look at the grain of the table and tell that they are not exactly side by side.
Yeah, actually, forced perspective comes up in a lot when you're looking at things of like giant whatever. And I want to read a super chat real quick. Silver Harlow for $5 says this stream has insufficient "they might be giant" jokes, or they might be giants. Yeah, that's probably true. Sorry, I don't know. Tell you what, you should put some "they might be giant" jokes in the chat. But anyway, so you guys might remember during the Iraq War, there was this viral photograph that started going around of a camel spider. And it looked like this gigantic, horrifying mass of legs and fangs and whatnot. But actually what was going on was, first it was two camel spiders, one hanging onto the other. And also, it was a lot of forced perspective because the actual animals were much closer to the camera than any of the humans in the shot. So it looked like a giant animal. You can see the same thing with sometimes people will hold up like a pet bunny or a cat with their arms out straight so that in the camera, it looks much, much bigger than they are, or than it would normally be compared to a human, when in fact, it's actually a fairly normal-sized animal. You're just holding it close to the camera. Mm-hmm. This also gets used in movies a lot. Much of the Lord of the Rings was shot with, not with any special effects, just putting the people playing the Hobbit farther back. That's it.
And then building the set or the set piece to look smaller on one end and bigger on the other, so it made Gandalf look huge and Hobbit look tiny.
Yeah, so there's a lot of tricks like that, and this is more forced perspective. Also comes up a lot in Power Rangers. Whenever a monster grows and then stomps on the ground, if you look carefully, you'll just see that, oh no, they just put the monster really close to the camera. That's it.
Yeah. So just looking at these three skulls, not even looking at the jawbone, these three skulls are fairly close in size. But again, because you're putting that third one much closer to the lens than the other two, it's going to look huge. This is so disingenuous.
Yeah. There's a reason that in scientific publications, you include scale bars and like example objects. In fact, often instead of having a scale bar, you actually have a ruler in the shot near the subject. So no one has to worry about how accurate your scale bar is. They can just look at your ruler.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I don't have one of those, and I found this thing. Take $1 out of your pocket. You know, take out something of known length, known scale, and put it next to that when you take a photo, because there needs to be some sort
Right.
of reference.
Rainy Thursday also says that they went a similar route with much of the effects in the movie Elf with Will Ferrell, which I mean it's a very cost effective and very convincing technique when it's pulled off well. Vanilla 1998 just wanted to say if you're interested in Henry the Seventh, then the Sisyphean Bee will be teaching about him on my show in 2 hours. So come over and say hi. There we go. Sorry, got it all through. Thank you very much, Vandalia 1998. So yeah, if you're interested in Henry the Seventh, who's not the one that you probably already know about, who had a whole gaggle of wives sequentially.
If you want to see another photograph that's almost certainly been digitally manipulated, Dapper, it's on page 39 at the bottom. It's figure 2-1.
Oh, I'm trying to scroll on the wrong window here. I'm trying to scroll on the screen share, and that doesn't work. Oh, no, not 93, 39. Get it right. Oh, yeah, no, that's just fake.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Seriously. Fact check, like, that.
I mean, to be fair, though, that would actually be good evidence of a giant if it were real. I would like to actually see this as a real thing. But, I'm sure the Smithsonian just hit it.
See, if, like, you had told me you wanted to, like, start going into a different section, I would have specifically picked these parts of the book and gone, hey, let me go ahead and debunk this real quick before we go on air.
Oh, well, let's scroll through some of the stuffs and pictures and whatnot.
And again, this is a painting of a guy, and it's like, okay, but how tall is he?
Yeah, and this is the giant's Fafnir. So, hold on. Wrong continent.
Yeah.
Giant legends from Scandinavia don't help you provide evidence that giants actually existed in history in North America.
Especially if you're not using, like, Richard Wagner's fucking ring cycle that...
Oh, that was our F-bomb.
Whoops.
We get one per stream. All right. This is another mass giant burial, evidence of bloody battle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
More news articles of people finding stuff.
It's like how to make the worst sourced book imaginable. All right, we're gonna go ahead.
Again, if you were gonna do an actual in-depth study of giants, you would need peer-reviewed archaeological surveys.
But as our author pointed out, there were no such things that indicated giants.
He had to specifically search for sensationalized headlines, and there's like, oh, there's a picture of a giant thunderbird. It's like, oh,
page 101.
What is this for freaking giants? Oh my god, what the fuck?
So let's talk about Monk's Mound a little, because it's actually pretty cool, legitimately, not just in terms of weird conspiracy land stuff. The largest earthworks in the Cahokia complex is a step pyramid which covers about 16 acres. So one thing is, Cahokia was a major urban center it was abandoned several hundred years before, say, Europeans started settling North America. But it was a major urban center, and it's full of all sorts of mounds and buildings that were used for various purposes. Now, it's not clear to what degree it was a permanent settlement versus perhaps a ritual site. So, for instance, we know that some of the quote-unquote cities in Mesoamerica were actually very large ritual complexes that were not, like, permanently inhabited so much, but they were still, like, city scale. I do think Cahokia was inhabited because I think there's enough houses and enough, like, middens full of different crops and hunted animals and whatnot that I think that the only reasonable explanation for such extensive middens is that people were living here. And you can actually do things like trace approximate populations through time. But anyway, and it wasn't really rediscovered as such until not all that long ago. I don't actually remember when, but, like, for a long time, people just didn't know that there was this urban center. So, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Illinois. Let's see. It was apparently rebuilt several times in the distant past. At the summit of the mound are the buried remains of some sort of temple, further adding to the mystery of the site. Monk's Mound measures 100 feet tall, with the original base of 1,000 feet. These even measurements in feet have raised the interest of alternative historians.
Yeah.
As well as its numerous astronomical alignments that show great similarities to alignment of Stonehenge and Teotihuacan. among numerous significant ancient sites. So here's a few things.
Teotihuacan.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my memory is that Teotihuacan is not actually aligned to any stars that are significant or any astronomical things, unless it was built like 12,000 years ago or something crazy like that. Because the guy who came up with the idea that Teotihuacan was aligned to astronomical events basically just kind of decided that a priori, and then he decided how far back you would have to go to make actual significant alignments. And it came out to a ridiculous number, but he just went with it.
That sounds like what Robert Bauval did for the Sphinx. He
Yeah.
goes, well, it must have aligned with Leo, and the last time it was on this part of the, ecliptic or whatever, it was like, 15,000 years ago. And I'm like, oh my god, dude.
So
really?
it is the case that there are ancient structures that are built as astronomical observatories, and therefore do align with various things, like on which day of the year this particular star or the moon or the sun rises at this particular point on the horizon. That's a real thing. That happens. But you cannot just assume that any given structure has this kind of alignment and then just, if you work it back, eventually, yeah, you're going to find something that it aligns to. But that's just post hoc rationalization. I'm going to need to see something more to say that this particular mound is actually aligned with astronomical things. Because another thing is, look, everything's aligned with something.
Yeah.
Because there's only so many ways you can point a building. And they're all going to point at something eventually if you continue that line far enough, either over in a great circle, or if you just do it straight into the sky. Especially if you're willing to roll back the astronomical clock several thousand years. So, however, it is interesting, and it probably was some kind of temple, because this is a real archaeological site, and it really was some pyramidal stripe type structure. But also, these kinds of conspiracies like to make a mountain out of the idea that different cultures make pyramids. And so here's the thing. Pyramids are relatively simple to construct because you really only need to worry about one angle and keeping the angle the same on all the sides. And having a square base is also very easy because you can very easily keep track of like the area and the slope and all this stuff, right? And pyramids are relatively stable. They don't wear away much. So pyramids are just a naturally good kind of structure to build. And so it's not surprising that many, many cultures have built pyramids. Sort of like many, many cultures have built houses with doors. Why would all these cultures in the world come up with the same idea of doors independently? It's impossible. They must have had it from the original door builders of Atlantis. Or maybe you wanted a
Maybe it was
building...
the Nephilim.
Maybe. But also possibly... humans like shelter, but they also like to be able to leave and enter their shelter. And so they put a hole in the wall, and then in order to keep it sealed from the outside, which is kind of the whole point of shelter, they put a thing there that they can shove into that hole. And that's why there's doors everywhere. Maybe. I don't know.
Inconceivable.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably giants from Atlantis, probably. But it could also just be that, humans find the obvious solution to obvious problems.
It's weird how, more than one culture had wheels on their stuff.
Yeah. You couldn't possibly have invented that more than once.
Nope.
Or even at all. It was probably aliens that gave humans the wheel. Because I'm sure no humans ever noticed that round things roll.
Mm-mm.
That probably didn't occur to anybody.
Nope.
All right.
I will say that this is... this guy comes right out and says it. The Chicago Tribune from August 10, 1892. Experts show racism by dismissing the mounds. Well, gee.
Yeah, actually, that's probably true.
Yeah, racism and prejudice said the lazy Indian couldn't have made the mounds, says archaeologist James Anderson. Hey, look, an actual archaeologist.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, that meant excavation of the site about 10 miles east of St. Louis and named Cahokia after a group of Indians that lived in the area in the 17th century was slow in starting in part because the early, quote, experts refused to believe the Indians had built the majestic earthen pyramids that still stand today.
Yeah, that part's true. Although the fact that it was published in 1892 is kind of weird to me. That's a surprisingly progressive attitude for 1892.
It just shows that just because a lot of people in that field were racist doesn't mean that everyone was racist. It means that there are always people who have their heads screwed on straight.
Yeah. Actually, I want to read some of this Cahokia stuff, because the thing is, Cahokia is really cool, and
Yeah.
I don't think enough people know about it. So covering some 6.5 square miles, which is, guys, do the math. How many square kilometers is that? Cahokia boasted streets, warehouses, man-made lakes, docks, crude but workable astronomical observatories. Yeah, and that part, I'm not going to say no, but a little more iffy. Because it's really hard to actually identify those things archaeologically. Walled fortifications and scores of earthen mounds as tall as 10 stories. Flourishing between 900 and 1300 CE. Wait, when was this published? Definitely not in 1892. No one was using CE in 1892.
I was gonna say, wow, that's surprisingly.
Yeah, no one was doing that in 1892. The city dominated the American Bottoms, a fertile 175 square mile valley near the confluence of the Mississippi, Illinois, and Missouri rivers. We know it was a great city, said Anderson. So
James Anderson, the actual archaeologist.
So this is not from 1892 then. That's got to be a lie.
It's got to be. It had to have been after the 1960s, because earlier in this section, they're referencing like, oh yeah, this place wasn't given protected status until the 1960s. So he just inserted a quote from 1892 and then didn't tell you he was going back to like a more modern writing. This is really bad for a guy who used to be an editor.
Also, Voland, which is how I'm going to shorten that. Sorry.
Volunder.
Yeah, Volunder, maybe. Says for $5, the Smithsonian keeps all their hoarded giant pork steeples in a bag labeled AIG. I'm only drinking water, but I'm still going to take a drink. Cheers.
Incredible.
Yeah. By the way, as it stands right now, AIG does not have any active copyright claims against my channel.
Woo-hoo!
Which is a thing that was not the case just a few weeks ago. Let's see. Excavations have revealed that Cahokian commerce reached from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast of the Western Plains to the Appalachian Mountains and controlled such raw materials as copper, mica, seashells, and flint. Yeah, it was an economically dominant power in the region. It would have been quite the sight, I think, if you were to go back at like sort of the height, which was, I want to say like 1100s was like the height, because then there was a bit of a decline, and then eventually it was abandoned. I don't know. Let's see. But let's get to something that is a little ridiculous. Because, okay, early build calls for mounds preservation. That's a good thing. Private lands, public desecrate or destruction. Goodness. The mound builder sites are located almost invariably on private lands, and although it is true some of the few cases of owners for sentimental reasons maintain the integrity of the mounds and the earthworks allotted on their property, the vast majority of cases the commercial instinct has prevailed, and the original outlines are fast obliterated by time and the abrading wear of the white man's plow. I suspect that anyone who's plowing would have the same effect, but I guess it's probably the case that most of them are white, so I don't know. It's a weird thing to say.
Bottom of page 107, hundreds of missing skeletons. A true counting of the number of skeletons found at Cahokia is also shrouded in the same mystery as the destroyed mounds at the site. Officially, there is almost no discussion of the hundreds of skeletons exhumed from this site. The details and physical descriptions of the finds made during the 1922 dig led by archaeologist Warren K. Moorhead of Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, are not very detailed and are downright evasive when it comes to the skeletons unearthed during his dig. One might even go so far as to say Moorhead was there to bury evidence, not uncover it.
What is this from? Yeah, where is the citation on this? It's just a thing someone said.
Yeah, I mean, in the last citation is from the Janesville Gazette in August 13, 1965. So you're apparently reading that, but again, Dapper didn't tell me he wanted to go to the section, so I didn't dig out the actual newspaper article to verify this.
Guys, this entire disaster is my fault.
I'm gonna roast him about this.
That's okay. I mean, that's fine, honestly. I was getting a little tired of just, like, reading one after another of ridiculous newspaper article that just says, hey guys, we found a tall skeleton. And it's just like, yeah.
I'm going to hang this on the author. I'm going to say that this is actually Dewhurst's writing here. That when he cites a newspaper, he puts it in the little parallel bars. But when he's making his own like statements and claims, he just has like a simple heading in text.
Yeah, well, it's very strange because like
he doesn't make a break.
He doesn't make it clear when he's citing things, because he's not following any like normal style guide for how to do citations, right?
Like, see if there's a difference in the print in the physical book.
Oh, that could be.
Oh.
But yeah, this is just suggesting that there's a conspiracy theory. Like, okay, but how do we know?
Right.
Cahokia originally had over 150 mounds. Now that could be true. You know, no recorded skeleton finds from main Cahokia mound. Maybe with no citation unless it's also just the Appleton Post Crescent from 1921. Despite the fact that one of the main St. Louis mounds, all right. Despite the fact that one of the main, this doesn't make sense. Well, okay, whatever. With more than 100 human skeletons was publicly destroyed and desecrated, we are asked to believe that no one has ever made any examination of the nation's largest mound, which has been compared in size to the Great Pyramid. This despite the fact that every other main mound in the country seems to have been breached at one time or the other in the past. I mean, okay.
In the book, the typeset is completely different. Like, there's 2 parallel columns like you would have in a newspaper. Whoever digitized this particular thing just copied the text over and didn't bother to format it like it is in the book. It's far more obvious that the author is making a claim there, and I was correct when he says, "Oh, Moorhead was there to bury evidence." Like, that's literally just Dewhurst making claims about people. So.
Well, so on the one hand, props to Dewhurst for making it clear when he isn't citing a newspaper. Fair enough. But also, you can't just make crap up like Dewhurst was covering up evidence because I find his descriptions inadequate. Okay.
It took me a minute to find it because the digital pages don't match the page numbers in the physical book that I have. So, like, in the physical book, this is like page 148-ish.
Oh, goodness.
So, yeah. Formatting's important, folks.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get in there. Are there more pictures? I want to get to a picture.
Yeah, we skipped a bunch of them.
Oh, did we?
There was like skeletons with horns, but again, you wanted to skip, and I didn't have time to like bookmark them.
Okay, fine. What page is a horned skull on?
Oh God! Scroll up until you see the carved statue of Moses. I'm gonna see if I can.
Wait, what?
It's on page. Oh my God! I'm almost there. It's on.
Oh, there's
page
Moses.
99. Yeah.
Okay, well, Moses with horns is a trope that kind of comes from a mistranslation of some Hebrew.
Oh yeah, it 100% comes from a mistranslation.
Yeah, but like it became popular in art in large swaths of the world, and even actually ended up like in the Quran. So. Yep. Yeah, but oh good, yeah, that's definitely not fake. That's 100% real.
Scroll up to the yeah, there you're looking right at it.
Okay.
That horned skull.
Let's read this. Real. This will be fun. The horned skull of Sayre, Pennsylvania? Sayre? Okay. Yeah, Pennsylvania. I don't know. Look, place names in the United States are like the stupidest thing in the world. Because it's just
it's because half of them are native, half of them are European, half of them are, just
too many halves.
Whatever you felt like.
Yeah, basically, people just pulled a whole bunch of like random geographical terms from all over the world, and they were just like, that's the United States now. Okay, great. Sayre is a borough of Bradford County, Pennsylvania, 59 miles northwest of Scranton. I've been to Scranton. I got my picture taken next to the Welcome to Scranton sign from the office, which was in the Steamtown Mall at that point, because people had been stopping on the side of the road to take pictures with it, causing a problem because it was actually a highway off-ramp and not just like a road, which, to be fair, I totally would have done that too, so I get it. Anyway, it was reported that a group of Americans uncovered several strange human skulls and bones. The skeletons belonged to the anatomically normal men, with the exception of bony projections located about 2 inches above the eyebrows. So first, okay, they're not giants. They've just got horns. So this does not support the main thesis, but okay. The bones were characterized... Oh, they were characterized as giant. Okay, sorry. A representative of people over 7 feet tall. Interesting that we don't have any scale on this picture, but that's okay. Scientists estimated the bodies had been buried around 1200 CE, so... Okay, guys. Was CE in use in 1916? Because I feel like it was only becoming popular in, like, the 90s or something. I mean, that's when I first heard about it. So, if anyone could find out when CE was first used, that would be great. Because I feel like 1916 is too early for people to be using CE. The archaeological discovery was made by a reputable group of antiquarians. So not archaeologists. Okay. In case people don't know, antiquarians are people that do things like sell antiques, not archaeologists, who are people who, uncover archaeological sites. So
And definitely not anthropologists.
right. So either this is the wrong word here, or these are the wrong people. I don't know which. Including Dr. G.P. Donahue, the Pennsylvania state dignitary of the Presbyterian Church.
Wow, much qualification.
Look, you can get legitimate PhDs and, like Doctor of Divinity and stuff like that from accredited universities and stuff like that. Sure, great. But your Doctorate of Divinity does not qualify you really to do archaeology. Just gonna put that out there. A.B. Skinner of the American Investigating Museum. Never heard of that museum. Sounds totally legit. The W.K. Moorhead of the Phillips Academy, Andover, Massachusetts. Okay, so no archaeologists as far as I can tell. So antiquarians is probably right.
This is that old, 18th and 19th century tradition of these white men have positions of authority in an institution, therefore they are reliable sources for information. It's an appeal to authority. Like this guy, oh, he's a dignitary. Oh, he must be reliable when he said he dug up this thing and analyzed it. Oh, this person's like a principal of a school. So?
Nell says that Common Era dates back to medieval monks, if I recall correctly, but became really popular in the last couple generations. It's always been around. Really? Because I thought that's... Apparently BCE CE was first used in the 17th century. All right, hey. I mean, that's not medieval, but, okay. That's early modern. Sure.
Speaking of Andover, I want to quote from the Peabody. This is an actual institute of archaeology. Okay. In 2020, Emily Hurley wrote an article that refers to horned giants and is this is a bunch of bunk stuff. She says, one day while I was working in the basement of the Peabody, plugging away at inventorying drawers, I was listening to a podcast and they explored the legends of the lore surrounding giants and they mentioned W.K. Moorhead. And her ears perked up. So they were like, yeah, we're going to reference articles about horned giants and all the stuff found in the Susquehanna Valley. And Reverend George Donahue, Pennsylvania state historian and Professor W.K. Moorhead of the Phillips Andover Academy, blah, blah, blah. They found this thing. And the podcast was like, oh yeah, they found, giants with horns. And she thought, oh my God, I have to look into this. So she did. And goes on to talk about all these articles talk about giants and they were, found here and da 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 da. And she's like, wait, were there really giants? So this is a shock to someone who is actually working in a museum of archaeology. Okay, that should tell you something, first of all. But she says after some further digging, it was discovered that the, quote, horned giants that were found by Moorhead and others at the Murray Farm were actually not horned, nor were they giants.
Oh,
Professor Skinner
you don't say.
wrote a corrected article for the New York Times, but it wasn't as publicized as the original, so it was harder to find. Apparently, while they were excavating the site, a workman shouted, "There are horns over his head," after discovering a bundle burial which had been covered with deer antlers. An excited visitor or reporter at the site heard this and asked another workman, who decided to play a joke and claim the skeletons had horns growing out of their heads. Another version says that a disgruntled camp cook made up the story.
So, where does this picture come from? So that makes me wonder where this picture comes from then. Is it actually... It just says... Okay, let's look what the figure caption says. Figure 411. According to historical accounts, the Sayre horned giant bones were sent to the American Investigating Museum in Philadelphia. The artifacts were later reported missing. But that doesn't say that this is what that is. Also, it looks like it has some kind of decoration thing on it. It looks like an art piece.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is this thing that I'm looking at?
Sayre, Pennsylvania. Okay, well, if you want to pull up the Wikipedia page, this is talking about, the fact that it's an urban legend. This Horned Giants of Sayre is an urban legend concerning a series of skeletons that a horned skull reportedly discovered by then state historian Dr. George P. Donahue and two visiting professors were excavated at a burial mound. The skeletons were reported to be at or above 7 feet. possessing skulls that had horn-like protuberances above the eyebrows, but were claimed to have been lost, were misplaced, or stolen while en route to the American Investigation Museum.
And let's take a look at what our citations are, because we have 18, 19, and 20 for them never actually publishing on this. So let's see. 18 is actually Moorhead. So, okay. 19 is actually Donahue, and 20 is actually Skinner. So they all three men were like, nah, that didn't happen. Good. Good to know.
Yeah.
That's
weird.
This was not the first time a gigantic horn skulls were unearthed in North America. During the 19th century, similar skulls were discovered near Wellsville, New York, and in a mining village close to El Paso, Texas. At one time in history, human horns were used as signs of kingship. Alexander the Great was depicted with horns on some of his coins. True. In Moses' time, horns were a symbol of authority and power. Incorrect.
Well, the imagery of horns is something that kind of carries through to this day. Like, in comic books, this is a really good example of like power and authority. Doctor Strange's cloak in the comics has pointed collar tips that when they sit on his shoulders, they actually come out right about where his, like the top of his head are, and they make it look like horns. And in a certain issue, one of the characters that he's speaking with is like, look, this guy's totally in league with the devil, his cloak is horns. And also the Scarlet Witch, another magic user, is notably drawn with her little crown that has two horns on the front. So this is common imagery, and it refers to, you know, like power and stuff like that. So that is a trope that's been going around for quite a long time, and we still use it. But it doesn't mean that humans had horns.
Also, I love that this is figure 412, evidence of horns. This is evidence. The Vatican Museum possesses Michelangelo's famous statue of Moses. So apparently, Michelangelo had the actual Moses, complete with horns, sit for him for this carving. Or maybe, just maybe, that's not what happened, and he was going with a common motif based on a mistranslation of the Hebrew that had horns instead of light coming from Moses' face. Maybe. Now, an interesting thing that you'll note is that if you look at a modern translation of that text in Hebrew, which is basically every currently being like published translation of the Bible, basically they're all just straight up translating the Masoretic text unless they say otherwise. Yeah, it's going to say that it was light coming from Moses' face and not horns.
Scroll up to the bottom of page 95.
Oh, the 8-foot queen in all, the beautiful 8-foot queen in all of her glory. That's totally a photograph, you guys.
I
mean, it looks like a painting. But, you know, sure. More heavily debate hieroglyphs. Okay, we're getting some hieroglyphs here. Let's see what this is. Okay, Salem professor discovers huge skeleton in mounds. This could be good. June 14th, so this is around 1930. Excavation 2 miles near Morganville in Doddridge County, which, I don't know where that is. About 11 miles west of here, revealed what Professor Ernest Sutton, head of the history department of Salem College, believes is valuable evidence of a race of giants who inhabited this section of West Virginia more than 1,000 years ago. Professor Sutton revealed tonight that he had been excavating the 2 mounds for the past several months. Skeletons of 4 mound builders indicating that they were whatever. Okay. Best preserved skeletons was found enclosed in a casting of clay. All the vertebrae and other bones, excepting the skull, were intact. Careful measurement of this specimen indicated it was a man 7.5 feet tall. Okay, where were the hieroglyphs? Okay. In the second vault, about 2 feet from the skeleton, was found the famous stone which had been subject to controversy over on the part of antiquarians. Some claim it was a hoax. Oh, you don't say. Some claim it was a hoax. On it were certain characters, sort of hieroglyphs, and it was hoped by some that it would prove the sort of Rosetta Stone with a message from an ancient race. Which, not pictured anywhere. We found hieroglyphics on a stone, guys. Trust us. It's totally legit. As proof, here's a painting of a skeleton. Like, oh, okay. Sure. Why not, right? Oh my goodness. This looks more like a photograph, but like there's nothing to tell me the scale on this. Is this a 7-foot tall person or a 2-foot tall person? I can't tell. Like,
yes.
This is This is figure 4.8. This find of a 9-foot skeleton in Indiana was shipped to the Smithsonian, where it immediately went into the quote-unquote memory hole.
Uh-huh.
Was it?
Citation needed.
Yeah, so... Look, if you want to tell me that a skeleton is such and such height, you need something to indicate that, right? It's the United States, so this is fair. Put a yardstick in there. A yardstick is about the same thing as a meter stick. Just lie it next to the skeleton and then take the picture. Also, if this is a 9-foot skeleton and we're that far away from it, did someone build a tower just to photograph the skeleton? How does this picture exist if that's a 9-foot tall skeleton? Like, you would need to be on some kind of tower or something if this is in the ground. Unless it's just really deep. But then how would there be this good lighting? Like, none of this really adds up.
Okay, so I do want to address something that's in my wheelhouse. First of all, hello, Evidence and Reasons.
Hey, Sal.
Edgelord 420, which, all right, asks, how do you mistranslate light from the head as horns? Well,
Good
the
question.
answer is because in Hebrew, the word used in the verse where it speaks of like Moses coming off the mountain and, you know, his face shining, it is using a very specific word. In the Hebrew, it says when he came down from the mountain, and Moses didn't know that the skin of his face was shiny while he talked. It literally says Keran or Panav. So Keran, or it can also mean light. Panav, his face, like his actual physical face. The word Keren in Hebrew is used to describe horns, like antlers. However, it's not just a noun. The verb form of that word means to project. Okay. Antlers project out of the skull of an animal. Okay. So you can use it for horns. However, light rays, like if you think about light rays coming out of the sun, they are also projecting out of the sun. It doesn't mean the sun has antlers. Okay. So
Or
it's
does
describing, or does it? Research horned sun. So when you're talking about the visual that they're trying to communicate here, it's that there are rays of like shining light or whatever that are projecting outward from his face. Okay, that's the visual that they're trying to communicate to you. So it doesn't mean that he has physical antlers or horns, okay, like a rhinoceros or a deer.
Which would be cool.
It means that the light is coming out or radiating away from his face in the same way that the sun emanates beams.
Yep. But
okay,
it got mistranslated and it became a very popular thing in art to depict Moses with horns.
Moses with horns. And so, you know, if you're like, well, how do you get that they had horns? Well, because that word is used to describe the way that horns protrude or emanate from the skull, they're like, oh, well, that must mean that he also had protrusions from his skull. Like, no, it means that, like, it was describing the way the light was emanating away from his face. Like, oh my God, stop.
Yeah. And the idea was not, it permeated a lot of Abrahamic art through centuries. Yeah.
I wish Many Karen was here because his surname Karen is the same word.
In fact, I believe
he would be like, yeah.
The idea was found in both Jewish and Christian circles, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a widespread idea. And like I said, it made it into Islam too. So, that's
one of those things that, like, if you want to translate a language, you don't just go, here's what the word means. You have to look at why they chose the word, because the language is meant to communicate ideas. Okay. So you're not just using a word for something and assuming that you know everything they're trying to say.
Right.
So, in that Hebrew text, it's describing an action and they're using words to describe that action. And if you just say, oh, this word is used somewhere else to describe horns, well, why is it used to describe horns? Because horns emanate from your head. Mm-hmm. And it's saying, oh, the light is doing this from his face too. So again, you have to look at the, I guess, imagery or the visual idea that they're trying to communicate to you. That's why a lot of translations between any two languages tend to miss things, because they're not looking at why these words were chosen or what the purpose of that language was in that section. So that's just one of my, it grinds my gears.
All right. Well, we are coming up to the point where we're going to be closing it up. So, Vishanti, do you have anything you want to plug?
Tonight, I believe NASA Bunker 33 is going to be pushing JM Truth really hard for the Top Left nomination. And for those of you that don't know what the Top Left thing is, MC Toon basically has developed a award for people who are at the peak of Mount Stupid on the Dunning-Kruger chart. So on the chart, that would be the top left where the peak of Mount Stupid is. And we are nominating JM Truth, and Writer of Dinosaurs and Global Mom, I believe, are also going to be joining us to contribute to that nomination, because holy moly, is that guy dumb.
Wow. Yeah, he really is.
One of the most shining examples of the conquered Mount Stupid on the Dunning-Kruger chart.
This is a man who once stood in a field in a butcher smock because he thought it looked like a lab coat, lecturing us about how the sun needs oxygen because that is the element by which it brings forth heat and light.
He thinks that space, like outer space, is not a thing, and that the sun is not in outer space because we know outer space doesn't have oxygen.
Right?
And,
so,
well, the sun is shining and it's on fire, and, well, if there's no oxygen in space, then the sun can't be in space.
Hey, you know what?
Okay.
Matt Powell said something similar. That's why we call him the air in space.
Silver Harlow says, Vishanti, that sounds really complicated. Why don't you just put the text into Google Translate?
Goodness, Google Translate is the worst.
It's not as bad as it used to be.
That's true.
I'm telling you. I use it quite frequently when I'm checking initial drafts of my stuff at work when I have to put it in Spanish, and it actually gets surprisingly close. Over the years, it went from being absolute garbage to being I would give it at least 96-ish%
That's pretty good
accuracy in terms of the way that people communicate Spanish here.
Here's something though. Never machine translate Klingon. It never works. I've yet to see anything beyond the most basic sentences that actually worked when translated via machine translation into Klingon. Usually, in order to recover the actual meaning, you have to know the original language it was translated from, and then try to do an overly literal, ungrammatical, word for word kind of thing. Anyway, Edgelord 420 says, will you do a video about the Hyperborean myth? That would actually be interesting. I think it could be fun, because it's a fun story, and then there are people who decide to take it seriously for some reason.
No.
Yeah, so I might actually that would actually be fun if I can find a fun source that's
Atlantis.
Seriously, but if I can find a reasonably fun source to look at that is taking that idea seriously, then yeah, I think that's possible. As far as what's coming up on this channel, let's see. I would bring up my calendar so that I don't say anything stupid. Okay, so Tuesday, Kent with Bent is the plan for Tuesday.
Woo-hoo.
Thursday will hopefully be my first episode of the Deconstructing Deconstructed, which the first episode of which premiered on Guts of Gibbons channel. Then Saturday, I have no idea what's happening on the 5th. But one thing that's exciting is I am recording a show with Jackson Wheat today. And I don't know when it will go up on his channel, but it will. And also, I will probably be mirroring it, a week or two after that. So on the 10th, what's probably going to happen is the next of the current series, which is which series is premiering now? I have to go look. I don't remember. No, that's not for a while, actually. I do have a series coming out that's called Kurt Unwise about Kurt Wise. But let's see. I think it's the next Dan Biddle bit. So there should be a third Dan Biddle thing. And then if you're wanting to look forward to future Thursday episodes, there's going to be a several-part series on a Pastor something Kirby who... let's just say this. It shows how bad he is at biology.
You're doing Jewish Matt Powell.
Oh, yeah, Jewish Matt Powell is also coming up, but I haven't actually recorded any of that, though. I just did the script. So Kurt Unwise is coming up, which is about Kurt Wise, and then Jewish Matt Powell is going to be a thing. I think that's probably going to be at least a 3-part series.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's super painful. So that's, stuff to look forward to. If you do want to join the channel or become a patron, you will get access to basically everything up until the first episode of Kurt Unwise, in which he talks about the red panda, and he gets a lot of it wrong. Like, a lot of it, in ways it's hard
They're
to...
related to raccoons because they sleep in a tree a certain way.
Yeah, well, I mean, they are related to raccoons. That just has nothing to do with it. So, yeah. And then the episode that I've been working on today, I did a lot of the editing. He talks about pronghorn and the platypus and why they are just a train wreck for evolution somehow. So anyway, yeah, lots of stuff coming up on the channel. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to see all that stuff early, I mean, you can see like over a month ahead if you're a patron or channel member. So that starts at like $1. So feel free. You'll get a whole lot of extra Dapper Dino content, or at least a lot of it early. And yes, Edgelord 420.
420. There is a
Jewish map owl,
and it's bad.
It's just wait.
It hurts.
It really is bad. But you have to wait, or, well, you have to wait either way, but, like, go join the Patreon, and you'll have to wait, like, less than a week, probably.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I just want to take a minute to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Bent Hovland, the Venerable Veed, and Patrick Dennis. The people whose names you see on screen right now are a big part of keeping the lights on here at Casa Dino, and without them, this channel really wouldn't exist in the form that it does now. If you'd like to join this awesome team, there are links down in the description to join the channel or to join my Patreon. It starts at only $1 on Patreon or $1.99 here on YouTube. There's also a convenient join button right below this video if you want to join as a member on YouTube. Joining lets you see most of my videos early, in some cases more than a month early. Also, you can join an exclusive member and patron-only Discord server, which has a pretty direct line to me. And as you go up in tier, you get more and more benefits, including getting your name on this list. If a monthly subscription isn't really for you, but you still like to help out the channel, there's a merch store linked in the description. It has t-shirts, it has baby onesies, it has mugs, it has blankets, anything you want, Dapper Dino branded. And if none of that seems right for you, please just like and share my videos and subscribe to the channel. That helps immensely. Thank you very much.